At the kind of dinner where the table glitters with crystal and silver, where every candle burns steady, as if trained not to flicker. A young woman looked straight at me and announced she was moving into my home. And the worst part, my husband, my millionaire, picture-perfect husband, sat there smiling like it was the most natural thing in the world. Everyone froze, forks in midair eyes darting between us. They thought I'd shatter right there at the table, but I didn't. I smiled back because I'd been waiting for this moment. See, when I met Daniel, I thought I'd already conquered life. I was 30, the youngest female partner at a Wall Street firm, cold-eyed and sharp-tongued in boardrooms where men twice my age thought I'd fold. I had my own penthouse, my own empire. But he made me believe in something softer. He showed up at a charity gala, bid $1 million on a sculpture nobody wanted, just to talk to me for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That's how our story started. Within a year, I'd traded power suits for wedding gowns, convinced I was stepping into a bigger future with a man who loved me enough to build castles in the sky. And in the beginning, he did. There were private jets whisking us to Paris for dinner flowers, arriving on Tuesdays just because the day felt dull. A gallery he bought me when I offhandedly said I wished I had a space for new artists. He even recreated our first date every single month, same restaurant, same table, same wine. It felt obsessive in the sweetest way, like he couldn't believe his luck. And when I got sick, when pneumonia pinned me to a hospital bed, he slept in a chair for 2 weeks, fired doctors until the best specialists in the country were standing around me like I was the president. I told myself then, this man would never let me fall. But paradise has cracks. You don't notice until the light hits just wrong. The first time I walked into my bathroom and found our houseguest Elena wearing my silk robe. Not just any robe, the one Daniel had custom made for me, locked away behind a coded door. She stammered about spilling coffee on herself, her cheeks flushed just right, but I saw through it. No stains on her shirt, no spilled coffee anywhere. Just nerves covered in sugar. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I let her hang the robe back on its hook, pretending everything was fine. Later that same night, Daniel stepped out for an emergency call. Through the glass doors, I caught him smiling, laughing, even mouthing a word that looked a lot like beautiful. And wouldn't you know it, Elena suddenly had to call her dad at the exact same time. When they returned, both wore the kind of satisfied calm you don't get from phone calls about sick relatives or business problems. That was the first tremor. Then came the secrets. His phone, always face up before now, lived face down. Late meetings 3 nights a week. A new cologne I didn't buy him. He started drifting in bed, whispering words that weren't quite my name, catching himself, then covering with precious girl in a way that made my stomach turn. The staff adored her. Our friends adored her. She fit into our life like a missing puzzle piece. But puzzle pieces don't just appear out of nowhere. I hired a private investigator because my gut wasn't enough anymore. What came back was worse than betrayal. It was strategy. Receipts for hotels in Chicago where he swore he was at a conference. Jewelry identical to mine bought for her. Surveillance footage of him holding her waist, kissing her in elevators, looking at her the way I thought he only looked at me. And then the kicker, Elena wasn't even who she said she was. No dying father. No Alaskan childhood. Her real name was Rachel, a psychology graduate who specialized in studying marriages like mine. She had been watching us for months, dissecting every interview, every photograph, learning exactly how to worm her way in. So I stopped crying and started planning. I set the dinner myself, polished every glass until it shone like ice, invited Daniel's parents, who still worshipped appearances, and my sister Clara, who would happily stab him with a butter knife if I gave the signal. Elena swept in last hair, pinned high wearing earrings that were copies of mine, smiling like she owned the place. Halfway through the meal, she tapped her glass, her voice trembling with practiced emotion, and said, "I've decided to make my stay permanent. This house feels like home now." The silence was brutal. My sister's fork clattered. Daniel's mother gasped. And Daniel, my husband, smiled, reached for her hand and said, "She's part of our family now. I can't imagine life without her." That was the exact second he lost everything. I rose slowly, calm as ice, and pulled out documents I'd had waiting. "Funny you should say that," I told him, "because this house, it's mine. You signed it over to me 2 years ago for tax purposes. Every chandelier, every marble tile mine." His smile collapsed. Elena's face drained of color. Then came the evidence receipts. Photos, financial records proving he'd been funding her life with company money. My lawyer stepped in, laying out embezzlement charges like courses at a banquet. And as if on cue, federal agents walked through the door with warrants. Daniel's parents couldn't even look at him. My sister looked like Christmas came early. Elena tried to cry her way out. She whispered, "I love him." Wasn't about money. I actually laughed because I'd read her thesis. She'd studied us like lab rats, figured out how to weaponize kindness. She wasn't in love. She was on assignment. They dragged him out in handcuffs. She left with nothing but a suitcase, mascara streaking down her face. And me, I stayed in my chair sipping champagne, watching the empire I thought I'd built with love collapse around them instead. Months later, Daniel's in prison, his name a punchline. Rachel faces fraud charges back in LA. And I stand on my terrace every night looking over the city free, in a way I hadn't been since the day I said I do. I learned something brutal, but true love without respect is just cruelty wrapped in roses. And fairy tales. They're just stories we tell ourselves. The real power is deciding when the story changes. So here's my question for you. What do you think? Was I right to expose them so publicly, to burn everything down instead of walking away quietly? Or should betrayal always be handled behind closed doors? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because stories like this don't just belong to me. They belong to anyone who's ever been lied to, underestimated, or told to smile through the pain. And don't forget, subscribe if you want the next story. Tomorrow I'll show you what happens when justice doesn't wait for the courts.